Hi everyone, we meet again in this lesson and we still in chapter 11, Immunity in Humans. So class, in my previous lesson, I explained about three lines of defense. The three lines of defense, the first line of defense, the second line of defense, and the third line of defense, where the line of defense involves antibody and memory cell. So, what happens when virus can penetrate the third line of defense? The answer is our antibody need to respond to make sure we have immunity to fight that disease. So, before we start our lesson today, let's watch this short video.
Mama, my cheek is pain.
Why? Oh, swollen. This like a mumps. Oh, baby, never mind. We go to clinic with your doctor, okay?
What do you think about that video? What things that baby complain? Have you listened in? He complained about he feels pain at his cheek. Actually, he feels pain at his jaw, but he don't know to complain how. So, we can see what happened to his jaw. His cheek or his jaw is swollen. Why? Because actually that baby is suffer with mumps disease. What is mumps disease? Have you heard before? Mumps is a viral infection and you still get that disease even though he was vaccinated by MMR. Why this can happen? Because his antibody actually is not so strong. So, virus can penetrate her body. That's why he get a swollen at his jaw. Because this is actually the reaction of his antibody to fight the disease. So, based on our topic about antibody, today we have a presenter. That will present about the action of antibody. Let's listen the presentation from our friend Russell. Okay, Russell, you can start now.
Topic that I got is actions of antibodies. Actions of antibodies is the meaning of action of antibodies is something that there's a five actions in antibodies. So antibody is also called immunoglobulin, a protective protein produced by the immune system. It is to respond to the presence of foreign substance, which is called an antigen. So in our bio textbook, we learn 5 types of actions of antibodies, which is agglutination, neutralization, precipitation, opsonization, and lysis. So agglutination comes from a Latin word called agglutinare, which means gluing to. So like we learned before, agglutination is also like sticking together. So in the antibody, it is the clumping of cells, such as bacteria and or red blood cells in an antibody. So the antibody will bind into multiple particles and join them, creating a large complex or a clump. By this agglutination, it helps phagocytosis, which is like the eating of the cell, eating of bacteria, something like that, as large clumps of bacteria can be eliminated in one pass. So agglutination, they combine everything, and then the phagocytosis can just eliminate everything in one pass. The second action of antibodies is neutralization. What is neutralization in the action of antibodies? It is an antibody that defends a cell from a pathogen or infectious particle by neutralizing any effect it has biologically. So it renders the particle so that it's no longer infectious. Like if there's a virus, it will be no longer infectious if the process neutralization occurred. And then is neutralization normal? It is very normal, and it is part of the humoral response of the adaptive immune system against viruses. And then the picture in the middle is example of neutralization tests. Take a look, the textbook also got. So the antibody will combine and to prevent from touching the red blood cell. And the third action of antibodies is precipitation. Precipitation only occurs when the antibody react with dissolved antigens so that it forms a insoluble complex, which is then called a precipitate that is easily destroyed by phagocytes. And then the graph there you can see, when the amount of antibody precipitated increases, the amount of antigen is also added.
Okay.
So the graph there you can see like what the curve is when the zone of antibody access, zone of equivalence, and when is the precipitate form. It's a bit more detailed in this graph. And the fourth action of antibodies is opsonization. So antibody opsonization is a process by which a pathogen is marked for ingestion and destruction by phagocytes. So this process of actions of antibodies, opsonization, it involves the binding of opsonin, example antibody, to an epitope on the pathogen. After opsonin binds to the membrane, phagocytes are attracted to the pathogen, which eats it.
Okay.
And the last action of antibody is lysis. Lysis is a simple one. I think it's connected to opsonization. It combines with the antigens and causes the bacteria to be broken down and decompose. So when a lysine antibody combines with an antigen, it forms something called bacterium. When it undergoes lysis, lysis is like decomposition. So when it undergoes lysis, the bacteria dies, then it's gone. It won't be in the body. So, and then the five pictures is what to do with these five things. So the last process is opsonization and phagocytosis, which is then yes, the end.
So, introduction. There are two types of immunity, active immunity and passive immunity. Both of these types of immunities can be obtained naturally or artificially. What is active immunity? There is natural active immunity and artificial active immunity. Natural active immunity is acquired after an individual recovers from an infection. Artificial active immunity is acquired when an individual is given a vaccine injection. And there is passive immunity. Natural passive immunity is acquired through breastfeeding from a mother to the fetus during a pregnancy, and artificial passive immunity is acquired through an anti-serum injection. Okay, active immunity. So in active immunity, antibodies are produced naturally through lymphocytes, and it remains for a long period of time. Natural active immunity is that when you get infected by pathogens, lymphocytes will produce antibodies as a response to these antigens. And when you recover from the infection, you will gain a permanent immunity against the disease. So that means you cannot get that disease again, and you are safe from it. And if you are attacked again by the same pathogen, the lymphocytes, the memory cells, will rapidly produce antibodies to react immediately against antigens so that you won't get affected by it anymore. Now, active immunity. Artificial passive immunity. So what is it? It is to protect oneself from being infected by a highly infectious disease so that you can be immunized against it. Immunization is a process that stimulates immunity against a specific disease through vaccine injection. A vaccine is a suspension of pathogens that are weakened, dead, or non-virulent. When the vaccine is injected into the body, the vaccine will stimulate lymphocytes to produce antibodies to fight against the pathogens. So every time when you get the first vaccine, it will result in low levels of antibody production, and it is not enough to cure you from the disease and to protect you. So they have to administer a booster dose to increase the antibody production, which will lift the level of the immunity so that you can actually be protected from the disease. If you are infected by the actual pathogens, the lymphocytes will produce enough antibodies and immediately destroy it. So passive immunity. The body does not produce its own antibodies. This is for passive immunity. The bodies are from external source, which means it is not found inside your body, but it has to be administered from outside by doctors or pharmacists. This passive immunity does not provide long-term protection, but it's very fast, immediate, short-term, and temporary. So natural passive immunity. It is acquired by a fetus when the mother's antibodies diffuse through the placenta into the blood flow of the fetus. And these antibodies will protect the baby for the first few months after the birth through antibodies that are found in the mother's milk or colostrum while breastfeeding. So artificial passive immunity. This is acquired through an anti-serum injection or serum that contains specific antibodies to fight against specific antigens. So that means it's not random antibodies to fight like a specific antigen. It has to be very specific, and it is for this one and only type of antigen that it will work against. So this anti-serum injection will give immediate protection, but only for a short period of time. There are many types of anti-serum, such as anti-tetanus, anti-rabies, and anti-serum for poisonous snakes.
Very good presentation. Rasa present about the 5 types of action of antibody. So, here we listened already about the 5 types action of antibody, that is neutralization, agglutination, precipitation, opsonization, and lysis. So, this is the action of antibodies. We have 5 action of antibodies: neutralization, agglutination, precipitation, opsonization, and lysis. And the presenter has explained each of these actions. So, I repeat about the body defense. Actually, the body defense system reacts when pathogens infect the body. So, antibodies actually are proteins found on the lymphocyte surface or protein released by lymphocytes into the blood pump. And the interaction between antibodies and antigens that cause antigens to be destroyed is called the immune response. So, the swollen at the baby jaw actually is one of the immune response. When the baby can recover from the disease, that baby we said have immunity to the disease. So, what is the immunity? Immunity is the body's ability to fight infections caused by pathogens or other foreign objects through specific attacks on the pathogen. When our body can fight a disease, we are said to be immune to that disease. That is a simple briefing about the immunity. So boys, before I stop our lesson here, I have something for all of you that is a very, very nice and interesting assignment. Okay. Our next lesson, we will discuss about the immunity and type of immunity. So, your assignment today is, every one of you need to create a comic about the immunity, type of immunity, and list the differences for the both type of immunity. And you will present your assignment on the next lesson. So, enjoy your assignment. Bye, and we will see in the next lesson.